It was sometime around dawn when they brought him out through the trap door. He looked at the woods, the wind rustling his shirt, and felt free for the first time in months. He had no thought of escape. Escape wouldn't get him what he wanted. B50967 wanted to be free, and this was how he got there. He didn't doubt that a double cross was coming, but if he killed this man who threatened the prison, perhaps he would be allowed to disappear into the trees and come out somewhere where no one knew he was a wanted man. He could keep moving, head west, blend in for a while, and then get back to the business of the hunt. He's a man, just like you and I, Cribs. If he can be killed, I know you can do it. You're my best man for the job. And he's a hunter, just like you. Show him your skills and earn your freedom. Escape and run, and I'll find you. Believe that, Cribs. I will find you. B50967 nodded and headed out under the watchful eye of the warden and assistant warden Strauss. Strauss was yawning, the cup of coffee steaming into the early morning air, as B50967 disappeared into the woods. They had given him a backpack, a sleeping bag, freeze-dried food that would last him at least 2 months, and enough knives to skin half the game out there. "Are you sure this is wise, Warden?" he asked, watching the man go and hearing him practically clank from the cutlery. "What is to stop him from simply disappearing into the woods and coming out on a freeway or a logging trail? You could have, in all likelihood, just released a murderer back into the wild." The warden shook his head. "He won't. He knows the consequences." Strauss laughed. "What? That you'll descend upon him like an avenging angel? I believe you might have overestimated yourself, my friend." The warden ignored his second-in-command as the two of them walked back through the under-prison. Strauss was someone who would rather believe that the people in these cells had mental issues or physical deformities than believe they were cursed or touched by the paranormal. If the warden had assumed his real form before him, Strauss would simply believe that he was hallucinating or he had been drugged somehow. The man was staunchly unimaginative, atheist to the extreme, and a perfect foil for the eternal warden of this prison. "Tell me, Strauss, how are our numbers looking?" "We currently hold about 1,500 inmates, 300 of which are low enough custody to be used in the work program, and no, I mean employment numbers. The military keeps inquiring if we need assistance, and I would like to keep the military out of my business." "Oh, well, we have moved some people around, promoted a few, demoted a few, and we have 4 shifts shored up into 4 groups with a captain, 5 sergeants, and 2 dedicated control room staff." "And the size of these groups?" the warden asked, already aware that Strauss was trying to keep the bad news to himself. "Well, we have enough for 2 18-man groups on day shift and 2 12-man groups for night shift." I can hear the but already. "Out with it, Strauss." "Well, we are expecting a few new hires once the graduating class at the local high school is finished, but we need an influx of new blood, and fast." "Are our people quitting with that much regularity?" the warden asked as they came out onto the rec shed and he pushed the lever to close the passageway behind them. "Well, no, but they are leaving." The warden gave him a withering look, clearly not having time for games, and Strauss elaborated. "In the last year alone, 10 officers have died, 8 more have gone missing, never to be seen again, and another 8 have quit mid-shift. The death rate for our employees is alarming, and the insurance payouts have caused our premiums to rise significantly." The warden waved it off. "Corrections is a risky profession. Everyone knows that. Stragview is no exception, and is, in fact, more dangerous due to the number of high-risk inmates we have. Inmate deaths have been high as well. This is nothing new." "Inmate deaths are one thing. Most of them don't have families for their crimes, since they are so heinous that they don't communicate with them. But losing so many officers is taking a toll. Place phone calls to those who have quit and offer them a position at the current pay rate. I guarantee some of them have debts and bills that are past due. They'll come back. Stragview is the most stable job in the area, and everyone needs money. Strauss shook his head. I don't know, Warden. You may have to get creative if you mean to keep the lights on. 12 per shift is barely enough to run with, and 20 is going to make day shift a nightmare. A day shift crew should be nearly twice that many, but it was hard enough to get what we had. The Warden shook his head. We'll get by. We always have. Something will come up. You'll see. As if he had manifested it, there was a call over the radio for the Warden. He took the radio off Strauss's hip and answered it, and the control room sergeant told him someone was here to see him. Have they said the reason for it? They say they're here to help with your hiring vacancies. She's waiting in the attorney visit room. He looked at Strauss, handing him the radio and spreading his arms. See? What did I tell you? Strauss rolled his eyes, but the smile ruined it. Just don't sell the farm for a few chickens, yeah? The Warden laughed. I have never been outdealed before, Herr Strauss, and I don't intend to start now. He walked across the compound, inmates and officers alike nodding and greeting him. It was a lovely day, late winter or early spring, and he was in high spirits. So what if the numbers were down? So what if the costs were up? It had happened before, and it would happen again. This prison had been here since the end of the Civil War, and it wasn't going to change now. He would endure. He always had, and there would be a good time after the bad. The Warden just had to weather this storm and make it to the other side. He came into the admin hallway, the stretch between the control room and the prison itself, and glanced at the door to his old office. Had he really once done business there? It was Strauss's office now, but it looked so small when he thought of the room he had in the tower. He liked the feeling of looking down upon Christendom and seeing the work of his own hands. This was his kingdom, his domain, and he reveled in the feeling of standing above it. He came to the door of the attorney room and nearly did a double take. For a moment, she'd been sitting there, Jessie, with her long blonde hair and her blue scrubs, her eyes smiling, her mischievous eyes and her inviting mouth. He hadn't loved her, not really, but he had enjoyed her in a way beyond carnality. He had enjoyed talking to her, being around her, and it had been lonely when she was gone. But such was life, and now it appeared she had weaseled her way back in. He must have pushed the door a little harder than he meant to, because the woman jumped as he came in, and the illusion seemed to break. She had blonde hair, but it was the dark brownish blonde. She wasn't wearing scrubs, but a cardigan and a long skirt. She had thick sandals, the cork kind, preferred by hippie types, and her gold-rimmed glasses winked as they set on her nose. She was pretty, but she wasn't Jessie, and that put him at ease a little. My apologies, I thought you were someone else. I'm the Warden. What can I do for you? The woman adjusted her surprise and got back to something more normal. I had come in hopes that I could help you. My name is Miss Evergreen, and I'm here with an interesting proposition. The Warden took a seat, his eyes boring into her as he looked for any sign of deception. It better be a good one. I've been propositioned by the best. She grinned coquettishly. I imagine you have, but I've come to talk about your staff shortage. The Warden raised an eyebrow. Oh, and how would you know about that? It's common knowledge that most correctional institutes are in need of people willing to stay. The problem is that the job is likely to wear them down, so they quit within a few years, just as you really get them trained, they leave and go somewhere else. Now, what if I told you I could fix that for you? I'd be highly skeptical. I don't know anyone who can fix corrections in one fell swoop. Well, look no more, because I have the answer. I can deliver you a tireless workforce that will put all others to shame, and it's from a source that's right under your nose. Get to the point, miss. I have a prison to run. Miss Evergreen reached into her purse and took out a slate-colored rock with a face carved into it. It was a laughing totem, the face intricately carved. He had started to anger when he saw it, thinking it was the one in his cabinet, but as she held it, the warden saw it was different as night and day. Had you going for a second, didn't I? She said with a wink. It's not quite the same as yours, but it works in much the same way. What do you... But he stopped when the little rock began to glow. As he watched, something materialized beside her, the light in the room growing dimmer as it took shape. It was human-sized, its glow light and ethereal, and when it came into view, the warden realized he recognized it. It was a haggard-looking form in a brown uniform, the kind they used to call muds. He had a short little beard, a beanie cap, his pants rolled up to reveal the tips of his boots. In life, his name had been Farley, and he had once been a groundskeeper back in the early 50s. He had been raking leaves and moving the grass right up until something had come from under the tool shed and dragged him into the caves below. The warden had always suspected it was one of the huge rats that lived down there, but even he didn't quite dare venture that deep into the earth. Farley hadn't been seen in about 70 years, and it appeared he hadn't been lounging around down there all this time. It appeared he had caught a terminal case of dead. What the hell is this? The warden asked. Farley, be a dear and go move those boxes for me, Miss Evergreen said, pointing to a little stack of cardboard boxes in the corner. He took them from one side to the other, stacking them up and then returning to her side obediently. He was as loyal as any dog, and he stood silently by her side as he waited for orders. He's such a dear, isn't he? He never tires, he never stops, and he's loyal to a fault. Wouldn't you just kill for a workforce like that? The warden found that he was nodding slowly, ready to make a deal if she could get him the spirits that called this place home. How many of them can you get me? He asked, fearing the answer a little. How many do you need? She asked, smiling like the cat that's got the cream. B50967 had been traveling through the woods all day, and he still hadn't seen any end to this place. He had heard rumors from both officers and inmates about the Stragview woods, but it appeared that they hadn't come close. Nothing grew here, nothing besides nettles and thorny creepers. The ground seemed almost porous, and it hadn't taken him long to take to the trees. He would have preferred to secure himself in a cave or something, but the ground made him want to be up high. So he hid in the trees and watched as the creatures ran by at night. There was a pack of them, 20 or 30 as far as he could tell, and amongst them was a person. This had to be his target, but B50967 watched and waited. He could be patient. He had time. A.W. Strauss came up to the tower when called on the radio. Yes, Herr Warden, what can I... But the thought slipped off the tip of his tongue when he saw the creatures. They were glowing, a ragged collection of officers in old uniforms, and as he looked around, he saw more. Officers, inmates, volunteers, educators, all the victims of Stragview at one time or another. They were becoming quite numerous now, standing at the ready, and Strauss grabbed his chest as his mind and his heart raced. "Be not afraid, Strauss," the warden said from behind his desk. "This is Miss Evergreen, and she is here to solve our staffing problems." "What is this?" Strauss gasped, feeling his poor heart somersault. "Have a seat, and I'll gladly explain it." Strauss did, and by the end, he understood. He didn't like it. It was antithetical to everything he held dear. But he understood. "You're still here. Thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague here. Always a pleasure to see all my new and old viewers coming by for another one of my spooky tales. If you'd like to support the show, you can always take part in one of our channel offers through Fume or Aura, or you can just click on another video when they come up. I'd really appreciate it. For our newer viewers, we also have lots of playlists and other things if you'd like to get caught up. I know some of my series have been going on for quite a while. If you'd like to get my latest book, there's a link down below that'll take you to my Amazon page. Towesey Homestead just came out, so if that's something you'd like to get your hands on, go ahead and have a look down there. If you'd like a signed copy, you can go ahead and email me from my email address on the site, and I'll get with you about shipping information and ship you a signed copy. If you'd like to support the channel in a more monetary fashion, we also have membership through YouTube, and we've got a Patreon that you can get the information for in the description. We have lots of tiers and everything to suit your needs. Patrons that support on the $10 tier, that's our Ghostly Reader tier, get a book anytime I write one, signed and on their doorstep. As you may have noticed, there's a list of patrons and members on the screen, and I'd like to personally thank every one of them for taking a hand in the future of this channel. Well, that's enough for tonight. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.